Lots and lots of opening shots of this partly cloudy sky. And I understand showing the main credits before the feature starts, but can't you pan over Pittsburgh hotspots or anything to keep us interested? Three River Stadium? Bramante Brothers? Steel factories?
Later.
Also, a movie forces you to stare into the awful, sinister eyes of Pittsburgh for longer than 5 seconds. Oh cool, this is my favorite scene in The Dark Knight Rises. I can't wait for Bane and his crew to break into the Gotham Stock Exchange, which is totally located in Gotham.
Jeremy makes a
This movie, that movie.
I think it's a nice story. He comes out, he looks around, he wrinkles up his little nose.
Just how high is Andy McDowell supposed to be acting right now? Because I think we're shooting for the 4 to 5 range, and she's clearly at a 14. Also, Puxatawny Phil does absolutely none of these things. You've been bought out by the Puxatawny Mafia. You can't say anything bad about the Groundhog. They got the cops in their pockets.
Okay, that was moderately amusing.
I strongly disagree with this theater marquee. Heidi 2 is where they got into some very adult themes, and it took the series in a markedly different direction from a family-friendly original that was so good it could interrupt an exciting pro football game.
Considering the fact that Heidi 2 isn't a real movie, you have no proof of anything you just said.
Why does the loop start at 6 a.m.? Why doesn't it start the second after midnight on February 2nd, or when Phil first arrived in Puxatawny? It's not like he wasn't an asshole before he got there, or before he woke up that morning. And what if he woke up early? Does the deity that set this whole thing up really put all its trust in what looks like an old-ass alarm clock?
For starters,
Why does the loop start at 6 a.m.? Why doesn't it start the second after midnight on February 2nd,
the reason the loop starts at 6 a.m. is because that's when Phil wakes up.
or when Phil first arrived in Puxatawny?
Whatever deity caused the loop seems to know that the day of Groundhog Day in Puxatawny will change Phil. Plus, waiting till Groundhog Day will make it harder for Phil to leave because of the blizzard.
And what if he woke up early?
If he woke up early, the loop would have started then. The loop starts whenever Phil wakes up.
Does the deity that set this whole thing up really put all its trust in what looks like an old-ass alarm clock?
You do realize that there are clocks out there that are over 500 years old that are still ticking, right?
Also, that's a massive alarm clock relative to the night table. Between that and a lamp and the flowers, there's barely a place for a glass of water, let alone a spot to stash your condoms, hold your whiskey bottle, and charge your phone.
I'm positive that there's enough room for 3 of those things you just mentioned. I say 3 because this movie takes place in the 90s, and not a lot of people are charging portable devices. Do you think Phil brought a Game Boy with him?
At high altitudes, it's going to crystallize and give us what we call snow.
Philsplaining.
That's the point.
These people are great.
Positivity.
What?
I definitely see a shadow.
This whole thing is rigged as hell, man. It's super cloudy out there and has been all morning. Not to mention there's a front coming in, and Phil even told the hotel manager that there was a bunch of moisture from the south that would be there until midday. My point is, why even have this f***ing charade of a performance if there's not a reasonable chance that the Groundhog's prognostication would be based in reality? Hey, maybe that's what you get for making a groundhog your deity. You all know he's a no-good line. Also, how many of these people are going to keep track whether the groundhog was accurate or not? That's right, nobody. It's like when your grandmother gives you G.I. Joe soap for Christmas. You'll be like, yeah, I'll totally use that, Grandma. And then you'll forget about it, and 5 years later someone finds it in the attic next to the Dollenganger twins.
Most of these people are just playing along. They don't actually believe that the amount of winter that's left is determined by the groundhog seeing his shadow. Much like how you play along when a magician does a magic trick.
Walking out into a blizzard wearing this.
He expected to go back into the van immediately afterwards. Jeremy, are you telling me you've never ran outside in the cold to grab something wearing improper clothing?
Does Phil really remember the morning show commentary from the day before? He looked like a goddamn zombie and was barely functional until he splashed some water on his face. How much do you pay attention to rando talk radio when you wake up?
Phil probably doesn't remember the audio from the radio verbatim, but he would have to be pretty dense to not realize that this is the same audio from yesterday, because, you know, deja vu.
It's Groundhog Day.
It's still just once a year, isn't it?
At this point, Phil should already know he's reliving the same day or is in a movie. Sure, it's totally up to think you might be reliving the same day, but the alternative is that you aren't, and you know what's going to happen, which is equally silly unless you're Miss Cleo's psychic.
A time loop isn't the first conclusion most people would come to.
One, I'm still sleeping, and this, I'm just dreaming it. 2, it's a prank, and everyone's in on it. 3, it's a flashback from when I was 20, and 8 magic mushrooms and thought I was Aquaman. 4, it's some kind of reality show about forecasters, bad bed and breakfast and snow. 5, I've had a stroke and lost my memory of the years since last Groundhog Day.
You know there's a blizzard. When are the long-distance lines going to be repaired?
Why is he calling about this at 4:04 a.m.?
How do you know it's 4:04 a.m.? It could be 4:04 p.m. Yeah, it's dark out, but daylight savings.
Well, what if there is no tomorrow? There wasn't one today.
Yes, I'm going to take a sin off for this irreverent movie about an irascible asshole just because it's goddamn magic how they not only pulled it off, but also made this thing a modern American classic.
Yep.
Who does this guy think he is? M. Night Alfred Tarantino?
I mean, Harold Ramis does kind of look like those things. Why is this a sin?
I told you there's a blizzard.
Oh, right, the blizzard.
I don't doubt that Dr. Egon is skeptical of some of Phil's claims, but he's making light of his prediction of the blizzard. Everyone knows that the blizzard is coming. Hell, even the B&B owner mentioned it earlier. So did the Wacky Morning DJs.
The reason Harold Ramis is making light of Phil's prediction of the blizzard is because the day before, Phil stated on TV that there won't be any blizzard.
One of these big blue things, this cold, frigid Arctic air, this big mass coming out of the north. It's going to meet up with all of this moisture coming up out of the Gulf, going to mix together at high altitudes and cause some snow. Going out on a limb now, not going to hit us here in Pittsburgh, going to push off and hit Altoona. Close call, folks.
There's talk of a blizzard.
Well, we may catch a break, and that blizzard's going to blow right by us. All of this moisture coming up out of the south, by midday, is probably going to push on to the east of us. And at high altitudes, it's going to crystallize and give us what we call snow. Probably be some accumulation. But here in Punxsutawney, our high is going to get up to about 30 today, teens tonight. Chance of precipitation about 20% today, 20% tomorrow. What is going on?
Well, I don't know, Phil. Perhaps it's that giant blizzard we're not supposed to get.
I make the weather. All of this moisture coming up out of the Gulf is going to push off to the east and hit Altoona.
Pal, you got that moisture on your head.
What would you do if you were stuck in one place and every day was exactly the same and nothing that you did mattered?
Now, that sums it up for me.
Yep.
Let me ask you guys a question. What if there were no tomorrow?
Okay, but haven't you been talking about this exact subject all night? If not, why did the guy make the whole glass half empty or full analogy?
Phil wasn't specific enough when he asked originally. The way he phrased it, he could have meant working in the service industry or in some labor job.
We could do whatever we want.
Louis DeJoy.
What?
Now that Phil knows what and whom he's going to encounter on the way to the Groundhog celebration, why does he keep taking the same route? Wouldn't it be nice not to run into Ned Ryers once?
He wanted to punch him?
Ned?
The assault and battery sin would be bad enough, but none of these motherfuckers does anything to Phil for knocking this dude unconscious? I guess it's true what they say about Pennsylvanians.
Raptor Jesus says that real Pennsylvanians wouldn't bat an eye at someone punching a man. And I always trust people named Raptor Jesus.
The truck.
Phil has memorized all the goings-on in the town square so that he can perfectly execute this robbery. But how long has he been in the time loop before now? 10 days? A month? A year? I'm just saying, some indication of the length between the beginning of the realization and now would be mighty helpful in extracting some empathy for this supposed protagonist.
Dude, this is the indication. It's actually a good way of showing how long he's been in the loop for. What would you prefer? For him to just say how many times he's been in the loop? I thought you hated exposition.
Can I have a roll of quarters?
Asking a f***ing armored truck operator for change.
Wraith 9112 states that people do this in real life all the time.
Is this for real, Phil, or are you just trying to make me look like a fool?
In the original timeline, Phil was a pompous squad, but Rita still seemed to tolerate, if not appreciate him. So what's with this dour appraisal of him now? She hasn't been seeing all the squaddy stuff he's been doing in this town for God knows how long.
You know, people like blood sausage, too. People are morons.
Nice attitude. Believe it or not, I studied 19th century French poetry.
This series of mistakes Phil makes as he tries to find the perfect date with Rita are amusing, and it cuts right to the same moment in time on the next day to show that he's learned from his mistake. But how does the date go after he makes one error? Can't he learn more stuff even after that? Or does Rita just walk away from him and tell him, you don't like French poetry? Date over!
Phil probably tries to get through the whole date, and then tries again the next day. Or he kills himself. Or he knocks himself out, who knows. The point is, Rita does not just end the date because of one of the mistakes Phil makes.
Unless one of them bought an extremely anachronistic Bluetooth speaker, they're dancing in complete silence, which only psychos would do.
Blair Asani says that psychopaths don't do this.
Wasn't that great?
God, I love how this movie realizes that it's impossible to recreate spontaneous moments.
Yep.
Vaguely threatening Jeopardy questions.
Well, Tom, that's the joke!
Doesn't it ruin the illusion when you put the groundhog in a cage and drive him away in a truck?
How does this ruin the illusion? Most people know that that stump isn't Phil's actual home.
Scene inspires the shittiest Jeep commercial of all time.
That's not a problem with the movie.
Oh my God.
This is either an overreaction to a blip in the electricity, or Mrs. Lancaster intuited that Phil killed himself with the toaster in the bath, and if it's the latter, it's some Groundhog-sized bullshit.
Actually, it isn't. She probably put 2 and 2 together after seeing Phil take the toaster. Oh, you cut that part out.
Did you sleep well, Mr. Connors? Would you like some toast?
Wow, the day doesn't end when Phil dies. If that's the case, what the f*** is going on? If this day requires Phil's enlightenment to proceed, what's the purpose of continuing it without him?
It stated that the day restarts at 6 a.m., so maybe time resets at 6 a.m., rather than when Phil dies.
You're not a god. You can take my word for it. This is 12 years of Catholic school talking.
I'd argue that 12 years of Catholic school makes Rita the least qualified person to judge whether or not Phil's a god.
Some people in the comments have stated that Rita is talking about Phil when she says that this is 12 years of Catholic school talking. But if you remove this black bar, we can see down here that she might be pointing at herself. So I'm gonna let this slide.
In about 5 seconds, a waiter's gonna drop a tray of dishes. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Here's the thing, though. Phil is now going through the whole diner and making the timeline different than it normally is. So if he's been interrupting the flow of the restaurant, it's highly unlikely this waiter drops the dishes at all, let alone at the exact right time. Hell, the whole point of getting Phil unstuck in time is to change things around him for the better, so he has to impact his environment.
I do agree that it's unlikely that the dish would be dropped at the exact right time, but the point of Phil being
trapped in a loop
isn't to change people around him. Everyone around him was fine before and after Groundhog Day. While Phil does change some of the people around him, the purpose of the loop is to change Phil, not his environment.
You guys ready? We better get going if we're gonna stay ahead of the weather.
This isn't technically a sin. It's a character error, I suppose. But Phil knows everything that's going to happen down to the inflection in people's voices, and he did not write this "what Larry's gonna say" note accurately.
Yes, he did. I mean, he didn't write, "Are you guys ready?" but the rest is 100% on point.
I'm just going to go ahead and note that the director himself said Phil was in this loop for about 10 years. And I'm sorry, that's nowhere near enough time to get this good at ice sculpting, especially since he didn't start training for it until well into his run.
It's convenient that you looked up that quote, but you didn't see the part where he went back on it and said that he was in the loop for 30 or 40 years.
Not bad, Mr. Connors. You say this is your first lesson?
Yes, but my father was a piano mover, so...
Yep.
Oh no! Because of this, now Phil's gonna have to find a way to get George and Lorraine together at the Enchantment Under the Sea dance.
Jeremy makes a
this movie, that movie.
I just wanted to thank you for making Debbie go through with it and everything.
Michael Shannon isn't creepily ripping off his fingers in this scene.
Jeremy makes a
this movie, that movie.
By the way, this woman is Princess Bubblegum.
I don't think we're gonna accept any more bids. I think that's sold!
Can't accept any more bids? Rita came out of nowhere with her checkbook, and there are a lot of ladies around here that have throbbing lady boners for Phil. Does Buster not want to make too much money on this charity auction?
Jeremy, do you seriously think that somebody is going to outbid $339.88? Especially considering the fact that earlier you said that Rita should have bid less.
1 second. All right. Well, let me turn in the blade.
Holy I know he was in a time crunch and everything, but this sculpture looks like Rita was just frozen in carbonite and is about to be transported by Boba Fett to Jabba the Hutt.
This isn't supposed to be Rita. According to Fuzzy Stripetail, this is a sculpture of Enorme Hamedenije, just pretend I pronounced that correctly, a formerly famous 19th century French poet.
We can't play the music, but the movie teases unobservant viewers into thinking that even this perfect day didn't change the calendar. It's at a different point in the song, but what are the chances that this radio station is playing I Got You Babe at the same time on consecutive days?
These guys say that this type of thing happens all the time in real life.
Anything different is good.
Hipsters!
What?
Also, how? Why? Phil's been doing this good deed thing for a while now, but how did he get just the right recipe? The old man is still dead, right?
The loop stopped because Phil changed. That was the purpose of the loop to begin with. Also, the movie established that the old man was gonna die no matter what. There's nothing Phil could do to prevent that.
Why weren't you like this last night? You just fell asleep.
It was the end of a very long day.
Bullshit. There's no way Phil, who is that much in love with Rita, just fell asleep on her, no matter how long the day was.
Do you think this is the first time he slept with Rita? He's probably bored of it by now, considering she wouldn't remember a thing. I know I said that the next video would be on Mr. and Mrs. Smith, but when I watched it, I just thought it was fine. And even then, I need to watch the movie at least twice before I make a video about it. So we might wait a little longer. I am still working on the Marvel poll. I'll try to get it done as soon as I can. Anyway, thanks for watching.